Hi, it's Bryant from Non-Existent News, and today we're interviewing Mr. Sigmund Freud on his impact on the world of psychology. Hello, Mr. Freud.
How are you, good sir?
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Good too.
Thank you for taking the time to come out here.
Of course, always a pleasure.
Let's go ahead and kick this off. To start off, where and when were you born?
Well, my birthplace. I was born in the small Austrian town of Freiburg on May 6, 1856.
Oh, that was recent. Happy belated birthday, Mr. Freud.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go ahead and say, where'd you go to school?
Well, I graduated from the University of Vienna and got my medical degree in 1881.
Oh, did you meet anybody there that influenced your career?
I met several people, but one that definitely stood out was my good colleague and work associate, Joseph Brewer.
Oh, Joseph Brewer. Did he, what did y'all do? Did y'all do anything together?
Well, I really became associated with him when he began studying the works of the unconscious and the effects of hypnosis and how he can cure people. Accomplishment-wise, we made a book called Studies in Hysteria, which was published in about 1885. And this is where we kind of began to grow apart a little, but he focused more on the hypnosis and unconscious, while I began to look more into the sexual origins of patients' unconscious issues.
Well, Mr. Freud, am I correct to say that that sexuality that you focused on was what caused the rift between you and Mr. Brewer?
Some would say those rumors are true, yes, McGowan, yes they would. I focused more on the sexual origins of patients' unconscious problems. For example, did you know that child molestation at a young age can easily lead to problems later in life for the conscious and unconscious? Yes, sir.
Oh, let's talk a bit about the beginning of your career. What was it that really caused your takeoff in psychology, like fame?
Well, in about 1886, I really began to look into the... Well, first off, have you ever heard the title of Sigmund Freud being known as the father of psychoanalysis?
Of course, of course.
Well, I coined that term in about 1886 when I really began to understand that the unconscious, the underlying meaning of the unconscious, represented all past traumatic experiences and events in someone's lives, and by interpreting dreams or unconscious thoughts and behaviors, I could locate and pinpoint problems of somebody's psychological problems.
Understood.
In today's world.
So you were able to use these dreams to, like, help diagnose patients in maybe not diagnose, but use these meanings you said of dreams to to see maybe their past issues.
Well, yes, the part of the dreams and the unconscious I really began to analyze through my process of psychoanalysis was that all these traumatizing events were the results of repression from the brain. You see, a traumatizing event, perhaps I had been raped as a child or molested by a parent, my brain would repress that bad memory into the back of my mind, and that's what I'm trying to discover here from the unconscious by interpreting dreams and other unconscious signals.
So those examples that you gave, like molestation, rape, and things of that sort, those could possibly maybe show up in dreams, but in like maybe different forms?
Yes, you see, it's how they do. It all explains it in my book, The Interpretation of Dreams, which was published in 1899 in German and wasn't later revised in English until many years later. But that was definitely by far my most famous piece of work, and one that I am well known for today even. It has set the basis for a lot of psychoanalysis work, and very, very famous among psychologists and whatnot.
So that book, that gives the kind of like a description, and like it goes more into depth, I'm assuming, on all the dreams and stuff that you were discussing, and the meanings of them.
Yes, it kind of describes how one's dreams corresponds or relates to unconscious thoughts to events and people during the day. For example, if you're dreaming that you're being chased by a big monster, and you run straight off a cliff. Perhaps that monster is your boss at work or something, and it is my job to figure that out and explain it and find the cure or some way to relieve your stress. And that's all in my interpretation of dreams book.
You see, I find that very interesting because, we all dream.
All right.
We all dream, and we all have these different, like things that happen in our dreams. Some people get chased by monsters. Other people may, be having a great time. There may other people maybe running freely. And so you're saying so for example, I have a dream all the time where I'm just running through a field, and then eventually I fall.
Right.
So could that dream mean that I would like to be running freely, but when I wake up, I realize that it's not the reality, and I'm kind of locked in, closed in, maybe?
Running, you said?
Running.
Well, in many cases, the running and through fields can mean many different things. Perhaps you're running from something, running towards something. And in this case, it's really, we'd have to do a much deeper analysis of your dreams, perhaps using free association or some technique does that to get these unconscious signals up to the surface to where I can see them and analyze them.
So let's say, for example, my goal. Let's say I have a goal, and that goal would be to eventually become an owner of a company. Right. Could that be something that I'm running towards in my dream?
It could be. There's a lot of things that many different interpretations can be well interpreted from your dreams and unconscious. And the unconscious is a vast depth of hidden information.
I see. But dreams weren't all you focused on, correct? You focused on tons of stuff about the unconscious, and can you explain that for me?
Well, you see, the unconscious, the best way I can describe. Well, here. I brought with me my
perfect
portrait, as you can see here. It is an iceberg, and at the tip of the iceberg is the conscious, because in the conscious you can see the tip of the iceberg, and you can see what's on your mind. Mm-hmm. This is I consciously know events throughout the day and whatnot, and I can easily interpret these.
Right.
In the middle of the iceberg, right below the surface, where you can still see it, but it's getting a little murky, is the preconscious, mm-hmm. Which also deals with the superego, but we'll get into that later.
Right.
Preconscious is dealing with parts of the brain and information from the day that can easily be retrieved with a little bit of effort and technique.
Understood.
And once we go to the very bottom of the iceberg, we find the unconscious, which also is related to the id, but as I said, we'll get to that later. The unconscious, as you can see, is at the very bottom and the darkest part of the iceberg, because that is the stuff that you may never recover and some of the stuff that you have to work the hardest for. And like I said, it's all in my book, The Interpretation of Dreams, and also deals with the unconscious. But that is the best representation I can give you of your consciousness and your mind and the unconscious.
Can I take a look at that for a second?
No, so please.
So the unconscious that you're saying, that could things in the unconscious be dealing with repression, as you hit on earlier?
Well, yes. See, as I said, we can see down here that the dark end of the iceberg, where you can't really see anything, that's the mind will use a defense mechanism, which I'll explain later, the defense mechanisms, of course. But the mind represses events that cause traumatic stress or anything down to the back unconscious, down to the depths of the iceberg, if you will. Mm-hmm. And we can't see them.
I see. Wow, that's a great little metaphor you got there. For the iceberg, that's perfect.
Some would say.
Let's see. Can you elaborate on some more of your theories on psychoanalytics?
Well, as I was explaining earlier with the superego and the id, those explain more of the personality traits, the three main parts of your personality.
You said three, but there's only two mentioned: the superego and the id. Is there?
Well, my good sir. Oh, a simple mind like you wouldn't even begin to comprehend the third mixture of the two, the ego. And so we're going to start with we'll start with the id. And the id, that's ID, really deals with the self-pleasure effect, where I I take care of my needs and wants first. If I can give you a real life example here, if I were to be if I was walking along the street one day and I found $100 written in a check to Mr. Bob Smith, my id, instead of returning it to Bob Smith, I would take it for myself, go cash it, and go spend it on whatever makes me happy. Hookers, drugs, anything. Of course. More cigars.
Cigars, of course.
I love a good cigar. 20 a day.
I see.
And anyway, so then moving on, that is the id. And the superego, which we noticed was at the preconscious of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. The superego is more of the brings out the inner morals of humankind, your better side, if you will. So if I'm walking along the street and I find this this check, I will do my best to give it back to Bob Smith. I'll call the bank. I'll walk around the street yelling, "Bob Smith, is this your check?" It's the better side of humanity. And now the ego, the third one that we did not press on earlier, is the mixture of those two. So you take a little bit of the superego and a little bit of the id, and you throw it in there, jumble it up, and you get a little bit of good and bad. It kind of deals with reality. So, for example, the ego, I'm walking down the street and I find the check. If I'm mixing in the id and the superego, well, my first thought, oh goodness, I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to try and find Bob Smith. I'm going to spend some good time looking for him, still using the better side, the superego.
Right.
But maybe, let's say I don't find him. Let's say Bob Smith is gone, long gone. So I say, you know what? All right, I'll keep it for myself. And after that, then the id comes out. So you see both sides in here.
So it's like a mixture.
Yes.
To use like a real life example, in the movie Hercules, which you don't know about because it hasn't been invented yet.
Of course.
There's on Hercules' shoulder. There's a good guy. There's an angel, and then a bad guy like the devil.
Uh-huh.
And they kind of like explain. And the angel obviously does his best to try and persuade Hercules to do the right thing, the mortal thing.
Right.
And the devil on his shoulder does more of like a like all the stuff that Hercules should do for himself, and the reasons why he should do a certain thing that'll please him, and then he kind of uses both of these and then like rationalizes and comes up with his own thing, and he would be the ego, am I correct? And then the devil would be the id, and the angel would be the superego.
Correct, very correct. Yes, that would be a good representation.
Okay, perfect. There were some defense mechanisms that you created. Am I right?
Yes, we touched on repression.
Repression.
The defense mechanism.
Oh yes.
My favorite. Actually, I brought along another visual. Let me pull that out for you here.
How convenient.
Well, we have the graph here, chart, if you will, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Freudian defense mechanisms.
Oh, okay,
now
okay.
You can. I will read these to you. You don't need to see these up close, but the as we touched on earlier, repression, dealing with the unconscious. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of you're unconscious. It's an unconscious mechanism, and the ego dealing with reality. Say you were once, we'll use this one, molested or sexually harassed as a child, mm-hmm. and it caused you traumatic stress. So your unconsciously pushed that event to the back of your head. Anything threatening or stressful about that time to the back of your consciousness, to your unconscious, so that you don't remember it anymore. And mm-hmm. that often happens with traumatizing events and can be set off at any time, really. And now, kind of similar to repression is our second defense mechanism, denial. And denial, the exact definition involves blocking external events from awareness. And that can mean many things. For example, you will hear, so-and-so broke up today. Well, maybe, but she still thinks they're going out. She's in denial. So, you're consciously aware of denying the fact that Queen Elizabeth I and Alexander the Great broke up yesterday.
Right, I see. So some might find those two confusing. So is there anything you can do to maybe explain how to differentiate between the two?
Well, you see, denial is more of a conscious act, while repression Repression is more of an unconscious, your body needs to do it to move past this traumatic experience, and denial is more of a conscious,